The way we begin anything often determines how it will unfold. And when it comes to our day, the most basic unit of our life, the first few moments have a power we rarely acknowledge. Imagine being handed a blank canvas each morning. The first few strokes matter. They set the tone, the structure, and even the colors you'll end up using for the rest of the painting. If your brush slips early, it becomes more difficult. Not impossible, but certainly more difficult to course correct later. Most people don't think about their first 20 minutes. They wake up and are immediately pulled into activity, often mechanical, often mindless. The alarm rings, and before consciousness is fully present, the fingers are already reaching out for the phone, scanning notifications, checking messages, browsing the world even before checking in with the self. These moments, the most sacred, untouched, and pure part of our day, are handed over to noise, and noise becomes the rhythm of the day. Think about it. Have you ever had a morning that began in chaos? Maybe you overslept, spilled your tea, got stuck in traffic, or had an argument, and somehow everything after that just felt off. You felt reactive, scattered, and emotionally drained. That's not a coincidence. That's the ripple effect of a disrupted beginning. The mind, like a calm lake, picks up the earliest ripple and amplifies it. The first thought, the first action, the first emotion, they don't stay small. They set off a chain reaction that shapes your attitude, behavior, and focus throughout the day. On the other hand, a peaceful start has a quiet strength, even if the day brings challenges. And it often does. Those who begin with stillness, intention, and awareness tend to move through life with more clarity. It's not that they don't face problems. They do. But they respond rather than react. And that distinction between reacting and responding is rooted in how the day begins. If you've ever watched a professional athlete or a musician before a performance, you'll notice they have a routine, a ritual, something they do before stepping into the arena. Why? Because they understand the importance of entering with the right mindset. Life is no different. Each morning, you're stepping into your own performance, a day filled with decisions, emotions, actions, and interactions. Would you step into that space unprepared? Or would you take just a few moments to align? The idea that the first few minutes can shape the entire day isn't philosophy. It's practical. It's observable. It's real. The brain in its first waking moments is highly impressionable. In neuroscience, it's called the theta state, a stage where your subconscious is most open to suggestion. What you feed your mind during this window becomes the emotional and mental fuel for the day. So if your first inputs are stress-inducing, news alerts, social media, emails, you're essentially filling your emotional tank with anxiety. But if your first thoughts are centered in calm, a prayer, a breath, a journal entry, a word of gratitude, then peace becomes your starting point. And just like a building is only as strong as its foundation, a day is only as grounded as its beginning. If the foundation is shaky, the rest requires extra effort to stay stable. But when it's firm, the structure rises with ease. In the same way, a strong morning doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it gives you resilience. It gives you presence. It gives you control. Let's take a moment to imagine someone who wakes up and takes 5 slow breaths before doing anything. No rush, no tension, just 5 conscious breaths. They then spend a minute appreciating something simple, a roof over their head, the silence of the room, the fact that they woke up alive. They sip a glass of warm water. They set an intentions. Today I will speak kindly, or today I will not rush. All this takes no more than 5 to 7 minutes. But those minutes, invested wisely, anchor the rest of the day in awareness and positivity. If a few minutes of mindless scrolling can drain you before the day even begins, then surely a few minutes of mindful presence can uplift you in the same time. The morning is not a small part of your day. It's the beginning of your story for that day. And beginnings matter more than we think. One of the most subtle yet powerful habits shaping our emotional and mental landscape today is our relationship with the mobile phone. Specifically, how quickly we reach for it after waking up. In the past, when people woke up, they looked out the window, they sat in silence, they prayed, they stretched, or they simply breathed. Now, before the eyes are even fully open, before the mind has had a chance to settle into awareness, the fingers are already unlocking the phone. This tiny action seems harmless, almost natural, even automatic. But what it does to the mind is far from harmless. When we check our phones immediately upon waking, we are allowing the external world to flood into our internal world at its most vulnerable moment. Our thoughts in the first few minutes of the day are fragile, like the first footprints in fresh snow. Once marked, they shape the path. In those first moments, the mind is like soft clay, ready to be molded. Instead of giving it the space to center itself, we let in a flood of information. Emails, news alerts, social media feeds people's opinions, text messages adds noise. In doing so, we lose the precious window where the mind is still untouched, calm, and open to clarity. You see, your mobile phone is not just a device. It is a portal, a doorway to millions of other people's emotions, urgencies, ideas, problems, and projections. And when you open that door first thing in the morning, you are letting all those energies walk into your mental living room uninvited. Imagine you are hosting a dinner. You'd want to prepare, right? Clean up, set the table, light a candle perhaps. You wouldn't just fling open the door and let everyone walk in while you're still waking up. But that's exactly what happens when we open our phones without first opening our minds. The most ironic part is that we pick up the phone under the illusion of control. I'll just check one message, or let me see today's weather. But soon enough, we're 10 minutes deep into content we didn't choose to see, absorbing information we didn't intend to, and reacting to emotions that weren't even ours. We hand over the steering wheel of our mind to something outside of us before we even remember we have a vehicle to drive. When we begin the day externally, we lose the chance to begin it internally. There is an old saying that how you start something often determines how you finish it. The phone tricks us into believing we're starting our day by being informed or connected. But information without intention is noise, and connection without grounding is distraction. The truth is, most of what we see on the phone in the morning can wait. But our own mind cannot. If you don't give it attention, it will seek it elsewhere, often in anxiety, restlessness, or irritation. There is a big difference between waking up and being awake. Waking up is a biological process. Being awake is a conscious choice. You may open your eyes, but until you've centered your mind, you haven't truly begun the day. When you put mind before mobile, you reclaim those first sacred moments. You choose what thoughts to feed, what emotions to nurture, and what energy to carry forward. Let's consider what actually happens in those early seconds. The subconscious mind is still active in a dreamy, receptive state. It is during this time that impressions go deeper. That's why spiritual traditions recommend morning affirmations, prayer, or silence. Because the morning is not just about preparing the body for the day, it's about tuning the mind. But when the first input is an ad, a celebrity post, a political outrage, or a to-do list, your brain is already set on survival mode. You begin the day reacting rather than reflecting. By the time we put the phone down, the mind is already running, thinking, comparing, fearing, planning. The stillness is gone. The peace is disturbed. And we wonder why we feel so rushed even before brushing our teeth. When you put the mobile before the mind, you start the day by tuning into the world's volume instead of your own frequency. The irony is we carry the most intelligent device in our hands, but forget the most powerful device is the one inside our heads. The phone may have answers, but your mind holds questions far more important, questions about your purpose, your direction, your peace. Your energy gratitude is one of those simple practices we often hear about but rarely take seriously. It sounds nice in theory. Say thank you, count your blessings, but in the rush of daily life, it's often dismissed as too basic, too soft, or too spiritual to be practical. Yet the truth is, The gratitude is not only one of the most powerful emotional states you can cultivate, it is also one of the most practical tools for transforming how you experience your day, your relationships, and even your own self-worth. And where better to start practicing it than the very beginning of the day. Think about the first thoughts that usually run through your mind when you wake up. Are they thoughts of appreciation or are they thoughts of anxiety? Do you immediately start running through your to-do list? Do you complain about the alarm, the lack of sleep, the responsibilities ahead? Most people do. Without even realizing it, they begin the day in a state of lack. I have too much to do. I don't feel ready. These thoughts create a mental climate of pressure, stress, and dissatisfaction, all before stepping out of bed. Gratitude shifts that climate. It doesn't remove the workload or change the circumstances, but it changes the emotional lens through which you view them. Gratitude is not about ignoring your problems. It's about recognizing that even in the presence of problems, there are gifts. It's about acknowledging that while not everything is perfect, not everything is broken either. When you practice gratitude in the morning, you're not pretending everything is fine. You're choosing to give attention to what is fine, what is working, what is beautiful. That simple shift of focus affects your mood, your attitude, and your emotional energy for the entire day. There is a well-known concept in psychology called the reticular activating system. It's the part of your brain that filters information based on what you focus on. For example, if you're thinking about buying a red car, suddenly you start noticing red cars everywhere. They were always there, but now you're seeing them because your mind is tuned to look for them. Gratitude works the same way. When you begin your day focusing on what you're grateful for, your mind begins to notice more things throughout the day that support that same emotion. You start to see good things you would have otherwise missed, a smile from a stranger, a helpful colleague, a small victory. You tune your awareness to the frequency of enough rather than the noise of not enough. It's not just spiritual fluff. There's neuroscience behind it. Studies have shown that people who practice gratitude regularly have higher levels of dopamine and serotonin, the feel-good chemicals in the brain. Their brains are literally rewired to be more resilient, more positive, and less reactive to stress. So when someone suggests you begin your morning by thinking of 3 things you're grateful for, it may sound too simple to matter, but it's actually one of the most intelligent things you can do to elevate your mental state. And the best part is, it doesn't require anything external. You don't need money, time, or even ideal circumstances to practice gratitude. You can do it lying in bed, sitting in silence, even while brushing your teeth. You can be grateful for the breath you're taking, the roof over your head, the safety of your loved ones, or even the lessons that your challenges are teaching you. Gratitude doesn't ask you to lie to yourself. It simply invites you to balance the weight of what's missing with the lightness of what's already present. It also humbles you. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more success, more recognition, more comfort, gratitude reminds us that we already have more than someone else is praying for. It brings awareness to the things we've come to take for granted. The hot water in the shower, the food in the fridge, the fact that we woke up at all. Gratitude is not just a practice, it's a perspective. It recenters your attention from what's wrong to what's right, from what's to what's here, from what's expected to what's precious in a world that is constantly buzzing, phones vibrating, notifications popping up, conversations overlapping, and information flowing in every direction. Silence has become rare. So rare, in fact, that many people are uncomfortable with it. They fill every quiet space with noise, whether it's music, news, social media, or even background chatter, just to avoid facing the stillness. But what if that very silence we're avoiding is the doorway to clarity, balance, and strength? When you wake up in the morning, you're not just waking up your body, you're waking up your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. And just like you don't jump into running the moment you open your eyes, your inner world too needs a few moments to adjust, to realign, and to connect. That's where silence becomes your greatest companion. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of stillness. It is not a gap, it is a grounding. In the early moments of the day, before the noise of the world gets in, there's a natural quietness that surrounds everything. The sun hasn't fully risen. The streets are not yet busy. The emails haven't started coming in. That space, that untouched, unclaimed portion of the day is precious. It is the calm before the storm, the peace before performance. When you enter that space consciously, with awareness, it becomes a sacred time to realign with yourself before aligning with the world. Silence is where you begin to hear things you otherwise miss. Not the noise outside, but the whispers within. In silence, your inner voice gets a chance to speak. You start to notice what you're feeling, what your mind is carrying, what your body is holding on to. Sometimes we think we're just tired, but beneath the surface is stress, unresolved emotion, or even inspiration waiting to be heard. Silence doesn't force answers. It allows space for the right questions to arise. We often think strength is about doing, pushing, proving. But some of the strongest people are those who can sit in stillness and not feel the need to fill the moment. In silence, you face yourself. There is no applause, no audience, no performance, just presence. And that presence builds a different kind of power. Not the power to control others, but the power to understand yourself. If you look at the most profound practices across spiritual traditions, whether it's prayer, meditation, reflection, or mindfulness, all of them involve silence. Not necessarily absolute quiet, but an inner stillness. The great teachers, sages, and even modern thinkers have all pointed to this truth. Silence is not empty. It's full of answers. But those answers don't shout. They emerge slowly, quietly, in between the thoughts, in between the breaths. Even in nature, silence speaks volumes. Stand in a forest in the early morning, and you'll sense a presence that words cannot explain. The trees don't speak, but they radiate calm. The wind doesn't shout, but it carries a message. The most powerful forces of nature move in silence: gravity, growth, time itself. They don't need noise to be effective. Likewise, when you sit in morning silence, you align with that natural rhythm. You begin your day not from a place of chaos, but from a deep, unshakable calm. There is also healing in silence. When the body is injured, doctors recommend rest. When the heart is broken, we need solitude. Silence allows emotional wounds to breathe. It doesn't rush the process, it honors it. In silence, we start to reconnect with parts of ourselves we've neglected. The part that simply wants to exist without expectations or demands. The part that seeks no validation, only awareness. The part that wants to just be. In those first moments of the day, sitting in silence, you offer yourself a gift that no one else can give. You tell yourself before the world demands anything from me, I choose to be with myself. I choose to listen. I choose to breathe. And in that breath, in that stillness, you begin to notice things, maybe a gentle emotion rising, a memory, an intention, or simply the rhythm of your own heartbeat. That rhythm becomes your anchor. That awareness becomes your strength. Because when you've spent time in silence, the noise of the world loses its power to shake you each morning. As we rise from sleep and step into the day, we carry with us a mental list. Sometimes it's written down, sometimes it's just floating in our heads. A to-do list, calls to make, emails to send, deadlines to meet, errands to run. And there's no doubt that these things matter. Life requires action, and action requires planning. But while to-do lists tell us what to do, they don't tell us why we're doing it. And more importantly, they don't tell us who we want to be while doing it. This is where intention enters. Intention is deeper than a task. It's a guiding principle, a quiet commitment you make to yourself about how you want to show up in the world. Where the to-do list is focused on the external, the accomplishments, the responsibilities, intention is rooted in the internal. It is less about what you check off and more about how you carry yourself through each item on the list. You might complete every task on your agenda, but if you do it while feeling rushed, irritable, or disconnected, you've merely gone through the motions without truly being present. When you wake up and your first thought is the to-do list, you are immediately in a state of reacting. You are responding to demands before you've decided how you want to feel, what kind of energy you want to carry, or what kind of mindset you want to embody. That's like jumping on a moving train without knowing where it's headed. You're in motion, yes, but you haven't chosen the direction consciously. The result is often exhaustion, even after a productive day. But when you begin with intention, even the same tasks take on a new quality. The intention might be patience, kindness, presence, clarity, or balance. You still write the email, attend the meeting, or wash the dishes, but you do it while remembering that you want to respond with calm, or speak with kindness, or be fully attentive to whoever's in front of you. Intention becomes the invisible thread that connects your actions with your inner values. Setting intentions in the morning is not about controlling the day or predicting every outcome. Life, after all, is unpredictable. Challenges come without warning. People behave in unexpected ways. Plans change. But an intention is like a compass. It doesn't tell you the terrain, but it keeps you aligned with your direction. You may not avoid the chaos, but you'll move through it with more awareness. Often, people confuse intentions with goals. A goal is a destination. I want to earn more. I want to finish this project. I want to get promoted. But intention is about the journey. I want to remain honest while pursuing success. I want to stay grounded while growing. I want to speak with compassion, even under pressure. Goals are about achievement. Intentions are about alignment. And one is about doing, the other is about being. When we don't set intentions, we let the world set them for us. And the world's intentions are not always in our best interest. The world might push you toward productivity at the cost of peace, or speed at the cost of depth, or ambition at the cost of values. Without intention, you can become successful in things that don't matter to you. And that is one of the quietest forms of suffering. To reach a destination and realize it doesn't feel like home. Taking just a few minutes in the morning to reflect on your intention can change everything. Sitting in silence or even while sipping your tea, you can ask yourself, what energy do I want to carry today? How do I want to treat people today? What would success look like today? Not just in tasks, but in character. These are subtle questions, but they shape your responses, your tone, your presence. And the beauty is, even if the day doesn't go as planned, your intention remains your anchor. You may not tick every box on the to-do list, but you'll feel a quiet integrity in how you lived through the day. There's an old story of a monk who swept the temple floor every morning. When asked why he did the same task daily with such devotion, he said, I'm not just cleaning the floor, I'm clearing the dust from my mind. That is the power of intention, turning ordinary actions into meaningful expressions of inner clarity every day. From the moment we wake up, we become both receivers and transmitters of energy, the kind of energy we take in. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, inevitably becomes the energy we give out. Just like a sponge absorbs the water it's placed in, we absorb whatever we expose ourselves to. And whatever fills us flows out of us through our words, our actions, our tone, and even our silence. If we consume chaos, we will reflect it. If we consume peace, we will radiate it. It's an undeniable cycle. This is why the first inputs of your day are so critical. The moment you open your eyes, your mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seeds you plant, thoughts, sounds, images, intentions begin to grow, often without you even realizing it. And just like no one would pour dirty water into a clean bottle first thing in the morning, we must ask ourselves, why do we let unfiltered, random, or even harmful inputs pour into our consciousness the moment we wake up? In the early morning, when your mind is still tender and your heart is still quiet, what you take in matters more than at any other time. It could be the softness of silence, a short prayer, a few lines of something uplifting, or just being aware of your breath. That's all it takes to set a higher tone. On the other hand, if the first thing you see is bad news, comparison on social media, or a flood of anxious thoughts, you've begun the day by filling yourself with low frequency energy. And that energy doesn't just sit inside you. It leaks into every word you speak, every interaction you have, and every choice you make. Imagine someone starts the day by watching an argument online or scrolling through negative headlines. Without realizing it, their shoulders are tense, their breath is shallow, and their thoughts are already carrying the weight of things beyond their control. Then they go into a meeting or speak to a loved one, and suddenly they're impatient and irritated or distant. They think they're reacting to the moment, but really they're responding to the residue of what they consumed earlier. The energy came in and now it's coming out. Now picture someone else who starts the day by lighting a candle, listening to calming music, reflecting on their goals, or expressing gratitude. Their inner state is stable, calm, and spacious. Even if they face stress later, their response carries more patience. They are not reacting from an empty tank, but from a place that has been gently filled. The way they speak, listen, and make decisions reflects what they began the day with. Their external presence is simply an echo of their internal preparation. This doesn't mean every morning has to be perfect or spiritual in the traditional sense. It means being conscious about what you allow in, because whether you realize it or not, your inner environment is always under construction. Every word you read, every sound you hear, every thought you entertain, it's all building the atmosphere within you. And that atmosphere travels with you wherever you go. People don't just experience your actions, they feel your energy. We often focus so much on physical hygiene. We bathe, brush, clean, and dress, but energetic hygiene is just as important. Starting the day with a clean, calm, and an intentional mind is like stepping out in fresh clothes. It doesn't protect you from all the dust in the world, but it gives you a better chance of staying unsoiled. The difference between a scattered mind and a centered one often lies in just 5 to 10 minutes of intentional input in the morning. Even the food we eat is a form of energy. In a heavy, rushed meal affects the body differently than something nourishing and eaten with awareness. The same applies to what we consume mentally. A person who digests inspiration in the morning tends to speak with more clarity. Someone who feeds on fear tends to project defensiveness or restlessness. You can't always hide the energy you're carrying. It finds its way out in the way you walk, in the way you speak to a stranger, in the way you sit alone with your thoughts. Sometimes we try to force ourselves to be kind, focused, or patient throughout the day, and we wonder why it feels so difficult. It's like trying to pour from an empty glass. The real question isn't how to give more, but how to receive better. If you want to offer peace, ask whether you've absorbed peace. If you want to speak with strength, ask what kind of strength you've been feeding yourself. The quality of your output is only as good as the quality of your input.